This is a joint webinar by U+ and InnovationCast. My name is Leonardo. I'm a co-founder and CEO of the company, and we work mostly around helping companies engage people to co-create ideas and bring them to life. So what does that mean? Let's try to unpack that. So every business needs to innovate to survive. We all know that, and innovation is no longer the job of a separate R&D department. It is something that the whole company needs to be engaged with, and that's something that is becoming a new function. We've seen a lot of attention around what it is to organize a company to innovate, and it's actually very critical. People, businesses and executives know that it's important, but there are many, there are two main problems. One of them is that this is a puzzle of many pieces. So we need to think about what is our innovation process? Who should we involve? How do we capture people's ideas? How do we validate them? How do we implement them, monitor return, keep people engaged? How do we govern all of this? So it's a puzzle of many pieces. And the other problem is that many companies have actually tried and not very satisfied with the results. And so that's really where we come in. We are seen as the innovation management operating system. So we basically accelerate all of that and make it simple, fast, and even fun. And it's not specific to any type of innovation. So we have customers using our platform, and I will explain what the platform is, but to innovate on products and services, business model innovation, customer experience, employee experience, ESG, workplace innovation. So many types of, so it's not specific to a certain nature of innovation. And it's not industry specific. So we're very glad to have awesome customers in all sorts of industries, from pharmaceutical to telecom to logistics, to food and beverage, and even more conservative industries like government, education, law, and engaging people to innovate and involve more people in the innovation process, which really has a lot of a tremendous value. So to give you 4 practical examples, just to make sure that you understand the different ways in which companies use our platform is. So DHL engages all employees in digital transformation ideas, and they basically saw their first idea reach implementation in just 4 weeks, and that was a global engagement that is generating a lot of value. So Delta uses it for new product development. Some of those are actually digital, and so it's tremendous to see ideas coming from employees that generated products that are generating so much business for them. Otto Fuchs in Germany uses InnovationCast for technology scouting. So a different flavor of InnovationCast, more targeted at finding new ways to forge metal pieces for NASA and Porsche. And Al-Majdoui is a logistics operator in the Middle East, engaging employees around cost reduction ideas. And so it's very diverse, and it's really interesting to see how companies use what we do, and it really teaches us a lot. So we have that recognition from customers, also from top analysts, but I'd like to tell you more or less what this looks like and why it's so important to do it. So first off, innovation starts with discovering insights, with inspiration. So what customers do with InnovationCast is they collaboratively find insights, trends that could inspire innovation. So that means monitoring startups, technologies, anything that can trigger new areas of investment in innovation. So they collaboratively scout these and signal this information across the company. This triggers conversations. They create visualizations, so they make that information more consumable, and that really helps to inspire new ideas, which is exactly the next step, which is, okay, ideas, but this is not a suggestion box. So how do we capture ideas and get them, stronger, faster with collaboration? So by putting ideas in front of the people who can contribute the most, how do we extract value from those ideas? So customers launch challenges. They engage from employees to even partners and consumers, around these challenges to find ideas to solve these challenges. And it's really about the co-creation of those ideas at this point. So people submit the ideas, they get actionable feedback, they see the idea progress through the workflow that they support, that the tool supports. And it really, we take a lot of pride in seeing the collaborative approach that companies take to co-creating ideas. So that means that it's not just about submission, it's about adding value to the discussion, being recognized for that, and doing this in any methodology or even any audience. And so it's very, very, very interesting. Then comes the part, and I'm sure that Sean will be talking about this as well, which is validation. So once you have good ideas, the next step is not necessarily to start implementing, it's to start validating quickly and cheaply. And so that's something that we also provide some support for, which is how do we put together a plan that works? How do we test ideas? What are we assuming to be true? How can we validate those assumptions in practice? And of course, then take the ideas to the finish line, meaning, and this is a moving finish line, by the way, meaning that that they get to implement, monitor return, monitor execution, monitor impact, and have without having to spend too much time on managing. They just have to think about the strategy and not status updates, finding out who's engaged, where are things at, etc. So the whole, it creates a transparent process, one that is well managed and easily managed by the innovation manager. And so it really helps to communicate the value of what innovation managers are doing as well. And but it does happen where sometimes you reach this point where you have the ideas, but you might not have the time or even the technology readiness to be able to test out these digital ideas. So even if you collaboratively find insights, get ideas, find ideas that look promising, sometimes companies need a power up, an acceleration of the way that they validate, test, and implement these digital ideas. And so that's really where I am very glad with the partnership that we have with U+. Sean will be telling you more about what U+ does, the great work that U+ does here. But it's really something that I want you to think about is what happens. It's not just ideas, right? It's what happens from beginning to end, from inspiration to results. And here, the nature of digital transformation requires quick validation, get to an MVP, and start to see the value. Sean, I'll invite you to your thoughts and I'll let you guide it from here.
Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and continue the discussion and just share key insights on what we've learned from doing this work many, many times over the years. Great. I assume you can see my screen loading now. Good. Okay, wonderful. So yeah, my name is Sean Shepard. I'm managing partner in the Americas for U+. My background is close to 30 years as a serial tech entrepreneur, with 3 exits, turned investor with 3 venture funds, and the first global product market fit startup accelerator, and even a school to train people to work in the Valley. I was pulled into corporate innovation quite by accident. I was asked by some corporates that I was working with doing POCs with some of my startups in my portfolio to help them in the same way I was helping my portfolio gain traction in the market because they were struggling for the same reasons. And so over the course of time, I found U+ and actually was a customer of the business before I became a partner in it. And we have a strong track record. We've launched over 100 corporate ventures in the last 7 years. We're a 14-year-old firm. We've learned a lot. We've worked in every industry and vertical you can think of. And we're very much about stage relevant work as opposed to product or industry work. The idea, and then what we've learned is where most of these things fail, is at the execution level between 0 and 1. So it's very much about the user and the stage of taking something someplace new to a user, because it's not transformation or innovation without adoption. And the reason we see most of these things fail is there's a gap between strategy and results that exists when you have to recruit teams to help you execute on these ideas. And where we see them fall is when they try to bring together resources from inside the business as well as outside the business that don't necessarily have the right mindset, skill set, or a clear methodology or framework to programmatically execute on a predictable, scalable basis on these particular ideas. As a result, Nielsen says that 30,000 ideas are launched into the market every year and less than 5% get traction and exist for longer than 3 years in the market. So you really need a philosophical approach that's designed to find the truth about where an idea fits with a particular user, how to learn quickly from that. We call it functional learning, which rapidly takes the feedback from those users and creates things that you think they can use now, and always with an eye on either profitability or impact. And that way of working fundamentally transforms the teams that we work with inside of organizations so that they see it works, they get strategic quick wins, and then they can start to build momentum with their stakeholders so that they can get the resources and runway they need to continue to rapidly develop and push new ideas into the market that actually get adopted and meet the strategic objectives of the business in the form of reducing costs, getting customers, keeping customers, and growing customers, or making the social impact that they want to make. As a result, those teams need to be comprised of people from all the different sorts of areas of the business that you try to pull from, whether they're inside or out, from DevOps to tech to design to marketing to sales to commercialization and strategy. And again, we see a lot of different resources being pulled in from a lot of different areas trying to solve for this. It makes it very difficult, especially if they don't have that stage relevant experience or a framework to execute against it. So we provide, and what we recommend clients have, whether they do it with us or not, are stage relevant, agile innovation teams that know how to take things from 0 to 1 and stand them up to get to product market fit. And I'll tell you what my definition of that is in a moment, but this is how it unfolds from a project perspective. If it's programmatic, there's literally steps and then teams attached to each step to develop what we call a portfolio-based approach towards taking ideas to market or building new ventures or transforming existing parts of your business. And this works across H1, or Horizon 1, Horizon 2, or Horizon 3. Because at the end of the day, it's not about B2B or B2C, it's about H to H. It's about humans to human interaction, making data-driven decisions in real time with agile teams based on the feedback that you receive from the market. Because to me, the only metric that matters at the end of the day with any transformation effort or innovation effort is you've got to get to a cohort of early users who will tell the world or the organization that they're better off with you than without you, and why that's the case. And if you can get there, then you can leverage that to scale in one particular use case. And then from there, you can scale out. But until you get there, you can't get to the scale that your organizations are always thinking about. This is how we suggest that you organize an innovation or transformation execution team. In the blue boxes are the teams that are required to do this work. Above that, certainly you have a stakeholder, and that stakeholder's responsibility is to provide you with access to the resources inside the organization and outside of it that you need to learn and move fast and quickly and quietly and cheaply, as Leonardo so saliently stated. They also need to provide you with a safe space so that you can do that work quickly and with low impact and low visibility, because the earlier you get visibility, the more complex your work ends up becoming. So you need a commercial lead. I call this sort of the technical co-founder of an idea or an effort. You can think of them like my role in all of my startups. I was not the tech lead, I was the business lead. How do we take this idea or this IP or this piece of technology and actually apply it in a meaningful, valuable way inside the market or with a particular user group? And reporting up to them, because they own all the business outcomes, is the product team, the senior delivery oversight, the analysts and the researchers, the UX folks, a scrum master to run the daily product and tech operations, and of course, any sort of tech team that's associated with that. And this is the methodology and how we see it unfolding, and how the team changes for each stage. And you'll see that with the color codings of the different roles and responsibilities. The very early stage of ideation, you need heavy market research and validation work. You need some product leadership to help you really codify what the concept's going to look like. That's a 4-week process. Once we've been able to create that concept and prioritize which idea you should work on first, then we want to go validate that with real concepts, high-level user stories, initial go-to-markets and value propositions, and how we would position it within the marketplace. And then inside of that, we have to take into account all of the complexities of the organization and their industries and markets. Are there regulatory environments that we have to operate in? Are there technical and policy requirements and legal requirements that we have to deal with? We establish all that stuff in the first 2 months so that we know where our boundaries are. And then we go heavy and deep into identifying and uncovering business model use cases, business model hypothesis, use cases, value propositions, potential commercial terms like pricing models, what the brand story is going to look like, and how we're going to test that with users, and then recruit those early users that have the problems we are hypothesizing we can solve for, engage those users to share our vision and our reality, to get honest feedback on what they would use right now, how they would use it, and then how that would translate into 2 things. Is there a market there? Is there demand? And then if there is demand, what is the minimum viable product or service that we need to place in their hands to get that engagement and start learning, and then turning that into monetization to get to that metric I just talked about, a happy cohort of early users that will tell the world they're better off with you than without you. And once we can accomplish that, then we can stand up and prepare ourselves for greater scale by adding more market and sales and customer acquisition or user acquisition resources to the effort. Then and only then do you actually have a stand-up business that you should decide what you want to do with. Do you want to continue to run it as a separate unit? Do you want to integrate it back into the business somehow? Or do you want to spin it out? Now, getting into the weeds of the actual validation and testing phases, these are the activities and deliverables on a week-by-week basis with the relevant team members for the first 4 weeks. You can see the team composition is heavy market, light on product and design, as a way to create concepts that frame discussions that are very specific with those early users, and get to the viable opportunity that we want to take to market. So obviously it's things like desk research, it's an analysis of what we already know from the market, it's doing all that initial legal check, it's the resource review, which is the most critical part. What resources are you bringing to the table versus what resources we're bringing to the table? It's then doing a lot of workshops with the internal resources in the first couple of weeks to get all the information we need and ramp up to start moving into customer discovery, customer journey development, developing those user stories, and creating those initial Figma prototypes, which are really fake versions of an idea that you can develop and rapidly iterate on based on the conversations and the interviews that you have with those users. Out of that, we're able to develop strong value propositions about what we can do for them, how we're unique and different, which is absolutely critical. If there is no differentiation, you're not going to get traction. We literally will develop the wireframes for the concepts as if we're starting to build a product, put those in front of the users and start to develop it and prepare ourselves for that. And then that way we have, who's our initial customer? What's the business model? What's the use case? What's the value proposition? What are they willing to pay for it? And then what do we need to build for them to actually start testing it with those folks? And then that next 8 weeks is very resource intensive from a team perspective to validate everything that, that we just went through, to define if there actually is a proof of market. So you can see a whole host of different activities in front of you. You'll also know now that we've started to involve some tech resources in addition to the market, product, and design resources that are already running this effort, because now we're going to start building things that we can put into the hands of those users and start testing different feature sets, different value propositions, different channels for distribution, different customer profiles, different use cases, so that we can get to a full scope of what these people are willing to use if they're actually willing to use it. And you shouldn't be afraid at the end of this 8 weeks also to go back and say, look, our initial idea was wrong. And it's better that we know this now than after investing a significant amount of resources in building something. I can't tell you how many times we're brought in to fix situations where organizations have built first and then asked questions later. The idea would be to do it the opposite. You want to de-risk your idea as much as you can with what you can control before you decide to make that investment. So at the end of 8 weeks, you essentially have a business case and a pitch deck to take to your stakeholders. It says, we should do this, and here's why we should do it, and here's what we learned from the market, and here's what the opportunity is. And oh, by the way, here's what it's going to cost and how long it's going to take to get into the hands of users and start monetizing it. It's the same way you would pitch a venture capitalist. Then you get to the tech build stage, which is now we know what that looks like. And we always try and time box the initial MVP to 3 months. Why? Because you don't want an IT project or a tech project to take on a life of its own, allow feature creep to come in, and then get to a place to where you've overbuilt without actually validating the initial reasons why these early customers want to work with you. Because the other strategic thing that we do during market testing is we're not just recruiting and interviewing friends and strangers in your ecosystem to give us their feedback to validate our idea. We're also recruiting them to be early users so that we can start to fill your funnel with early customers for that cohort that I keep talking about. And then at that point, to be really honest with you, that's when the learning really starts. When you actually start to get it in the hands of the users. And it needs to be a very high touch strategy, because the more time you spend with these folks understanding how they use your product or service, the faster you're going to learn where scalable adoption is going to come from. And then once we feel like we've been able to validate with that statistically significant cohort, now we can start to prepare this thing for scale. So that means we're supporting the existing customers and learning and constantly developing for them, because we've made the bet that if we develop for them, there are many more like them that need the same thing. And then we're preparing for how do we start to scale our outreach to acquire more users? What's the cost to acquire those customers versus the customer lifetime value? What channels are the ones that are working well now that we should double down on? And which ones do we want to continue to experiment with? Which messages are working the best? And then what's the overall business cycle? What does that conversion funnel look like, and how do we start to optimize it once we've established it? And then how do we continue to support this? And then what is the team as it grows? What does it need to look like? And where do we want those people to come from? Do we want to recruit from outside the organization? Do we want to recruit from inside the organization? Do we want to put this back in the hands of an existing part of the business? When we do that, I also caution that you still need stage relevant people, because even if you're ready to scale, many times the people inside your business have not been in the scale stage. And so they're not ready to embrace the ambiguity that's required, or this is a different kind of sale and positioning than what they might be used to. And we find that oftentimes in commodity businesses, when you're trying to offer recurring revenue subscription-based business models, you need a different team. You need different people, because if you put this on that existing team, it hurts their existing sales, and you rarely will be successful with the current product. Can we leverage them for introductions and referrals into the right parts of our ecosystem to get customers? Absolutely. Do we need to give them a reason to believe in that? Yes, we do. And we have to think about all that stuff strategically at this stage as well. So given time, I want to refresh that the way that the best way to work in this environment is that if you can stand up an agile innovation team that has a safe space with a transparent framework, supported by accountable leaders that will give you access to the resources that you need, and a connected environment, you operate with daily 15-minute stand-ups with the tactical team. You run weekly insights reviews with the broader management structure to understand what was done this week, what did we learn from it, what should we do differently next week as a result, because this is a situation where we don't know what we don't know yet until we're out there talking to humans and collecting data. And we have to be willing to adjust on the fly. I mean, we have A/B smoke tests going with different campaigns, for example, where we're making changes every day based on what we're learning. That's not uncommon. This is not a waterfall process. And then we strongly advocate that you run monthly steering committees where you bring together a broader base of influencers in your organization to help continue to garner the support that you need by delivering to them your experiences along this journey using a transparent framework so that they understand the importance that this isn't measured like the rest of your business, that you're measuring progress based on learning and insights, and even measuring what we call cost per insights as a way to optimize efficiently your innovation operation so that you can continue to get the resources in the runway that you need. You need teams with digitally native skill sets. There are two big gaps we see in most innovation teams. One is the commercialization lead that I mentioned to you before. Many organizations don't even know that's a thing, but that non-business or that non-technical co-founder who owns the business outcomes, that has experience in going from 0 to 1, is critical to drive this at the project or program level. And then you need digital product leadership and management, which is different than maybe physical product leadership and management. They have to have that mindset and that experience in rapidly iterating based on market feedback. Then you need human-centered design thinkers and modern tech stack experience, because everything's moving to the cloud. Who's cloud native and can build on that? And then those market resources are not just your traditional agency or marketing or sales people. These are the Renaissance folks. These are the ones that are really good at going from 0 to 1. So in summary, the 4 big things that I want to get across and make sure everybody understands is you need to start having conversations about the concept of stage relevant teams and their mindset, and the fact that, for example, U+, we only hire people that come from the startup world. Because in our view, if you haven't worked in a startup, you don't really understand what you're getting yourself into. And that's not just experience and knowledge of it, but they actually have to possess the appropriate behaviors, embracing ambiguity, strong at cross-functional communication, able to pivot on a dime, able to strategically navigate an ecosystem to leverage the right folks in order to get stuff done. They know how to translate between the market and the product teams. You need that safe space to learn quickly, cheaply, and quietly, while making minimal impact on the existing businesses and ecosystem, but getting the most learning. You need those aligned and accountable stakeholders that will give you the access that you need to those things and the air cover to move quickly. And then once you've established that at a project level, you can move to a portfolio approach to scale this. We have clients that have us working on 5 or 6 startups at the same time, or 5 or 6 different transformation initiatives at the same time. We staff the teams accordingly so that they're able to continue with each of those efforts throughout the life cycle. So that's it for me. I'll leave it open now back to you, Leonardo, for discussion and Q&A.
So I'll open it up for questions, remarks, feedback. Bruno, go ahead.
Yeah, just one question about the size of the companies that you can use this kind of framework, because this was one question when they see that. I've already a discussion this afternoon in France with a customer with this methodology of U+, and they say, well, wow, when they see that, this is only for big company.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. It's ironic because this methodology comes from person startups, even though we're applying it in large companies.
Because you have two ways. Because when you see that, I know this is kind of framework, but customer focused, say, oh, and what he said always is, my team is not focused like this. Experimentation like this is very, very never mindset in the whole company, even in the CEO level. Huh? It's not only so it's very, very difficult to how long it take to change a mindset in a company like this, because it's very. I tried this already when I was manager, but it's very difficult.
Yeah. Well, you're right, and which is why we approach it a little differently. I don't, and if you remember about the third slide, I talk about functional transformation, not cultural, because I know it's achievable at a team level. And so we think about it in terms of team-based transformation as opposed to organizational transformation, because you just can't eat an elephant in one bite. What you can do is show progress and show wins and success at a team level, and that can grow from there. We know that works. I've been listening to people for 30 years talk about culture transformation, and I haven't really seen an effective model for doing it, or anyone able to answer your question, Bruno, about how long does it take?
Yeah,
and is it possible?
Go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that I completely agree with Bruno, which is why we take the approach that it's a team-based transformation as opposed to sort of organizational.
I would also add that here, and Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not just so Sean, you presented a framework that companies can adopt, and you even mentioned that it could be with or without U+. You know, that the takeaways are valid in any case. But Bruno, just to be clear, U+ does provide the people to do it, because of the realization that sometimes, as you said, it's difficult to to make it happen internally with the people who are busy with have their own plans, their own goals, their own execution. And so that's exactly when all of this can take traction, is when you not only use this as a way to create the capability, but you bring outside resources who are trained and have the mindset and the skill set and everything else that Sean said are the ingredients who can help take it forward.
I have a second question about that. Is we have I don't know whether it's in France or all across the country, but innovations for a long time, innovation is only for the product. You can laugh. I have already some customers who feel like this, like innovation product, and you can see Amazon doesn't do no innovation of the product, but it's very because I know you have to explain that, because innovations, you say you have many people who present your framework is always like this. How you don't have to go to put digitals in my product, it's always the case like this. How you you can, because sometimes it's like the smart home. You have some product, physical product and digital product. Do you manage both in your analysis or not?
Yes. No, yes, and you're right. Once again, to me, innovation is behavioral improvement, right? I mean, you're advancing human performance in some way, shape, or form. And sometimes that's driven by the product. Sometimes it's driven by the user. Sometimes it's driven by whether it's physical or digital. So for example, we do a lot in IoT. We do a lot in service design innovation, process improvement innovation. But yes, the reason that I think the reason that people come out of a product perspective is that tends to be where they focus and then they actually need help. But the real innovation comes when people adopt a new way of doing things, and that there are concrete, tangible outcomes that are measurable about how their lives are better as a result of it, personally or professionally.
I couldn't agree more, and I agree with you also, Bruno, in saying that. But I do think that there's been a change. So yes, initially I would say that 10 years ago, everybody who approached us was talking about new product development, product innovation. And sometimes I guess also that nowadays when people refer to product innovation, they're actually talking about different things. We also find that, because of the way that, software as a service is also product. How many things are product, and the way and the productized way of looking at services, or even process. So we have, as I mentioned, companies innovating in workplace experience, and that retains talent, customer experience, and that can be digital or non-digital. But usually more and more, the fact is that these ideas and their solutions have to have a digital side to them. And the digital side to ideas also allows you to scale your learning, right? Because you get to more people, you get data, and all of that. So even if it's a physical product, and we do have many, we have food and beverage companies, so you can imagine there. But there is a digital side to it as well that needs to be acknowledged. And I agree with you that it's not only product. We have companies innovating in many, many different fronts. So appreciate.
Yeah, I would say connected services is one of the big areas and that's just emerging. I think everything will be connected to something through the interwebs at some point, in the next 2 decades.
It's one more is about technology, because when you talk about technology and the size of technology, web, we talk about IoT, data, artificial intelligence, blockchain, NFT, so on and so on. Do you manage this kind of technology or not? Where we are on technology, because you talk about innovations, and sometimes I have a question about that, because of Web3 and so on and so on.
Yep.
Where we manage everything on your side? Do you have partners with different technology? How you manage this?
We have the subject matter experts as a part of the team for each of those fields. So we do a lot in blockchain, we do a lot in AI, a lot in machine learning, a lot in Web3 now. And we will partner and do collaborate with other firms. A lot of the time an organization will hire BCG or McKinsey and pay them by the slide to tell them what to do for the next 3 years. But they don't have the people to actually go out and execute and test and validate things like what's the first and most likely success story for us in Web3? Or how do we take it, what's the use case for blockchain for us right now? Or when and how is AI really going to be valuable for us? So that's all part of the validation phase of the work. The idea itself really is the only thing that makes the difference.
Yes, I wanted to add something.
Please.
We are more than happy to be one of the U+ partners. What I wanted to say is digital transformation, in my point of view, is one of the most important things for any company to enter new markets, to stay in the market. And a proof of that, what happened in quarantine, last quarantine, most of the companies were forced to provide the services via the internet. So that's all I wanted to say.
No, you're right. The question then becomes, how do we do it and who's going to do it? Right? And those are always the gaps that we see. I think everybody agrees with you now, Abdullah, especially during the pandemic, right? They all have to do something. And I think many people were surprised at how quickly they could adapt when they needed to. But that's typical of change, right? People either change because they have to or they want to. And so then the question becomes, how do you do it? And and then who actually drives it?
We have a question from Parker. Parker, do you want to explain what you mean by have we partnered?
Well, Leo, it appears that you've got a platform
Yes.
there. And I don't know if Sean, if you've hooked into the platform yet or used it at all.
Ah, okay, that's what you mean. Sorry, I didn't know
Yeah,
what you meant.
actually, the two of you
So,
working together.
Yeah, which is why we're doing this. Because I think what I love about what InnoCast is doing is they provide a management platform, right? We don't offer that. We provide the people and the expertise and a framework. And you can plug our framework. You can customize this platform to literally use our framework, or we can operate within the frameworks that have already been established by other InnoCast customers.
Exactly. And so basically where we have, we have a very powerful workflow engine to put together the process that the company has and evolve that with learning. Where U+ brings tremendous value, as I was saying, is when ideas get to a validation and execution stage, sometimes companies don't have the time, resources to make it happen, or would just benefit from doing it faster, better, and in a more efficient, effective way. And so leveraging U+'s services really helps with that.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah. Well, my last question for you guys is, how important do you see culture as an amplifier or an enabler for digital transformation? That's a soft lob to you.
It's not just digital transformation. Culture is something that is spoken about in so many different ways. I actually keep saying that we don't change culture. There's nothing you do to change culture. What you do is create better conditions for a better culture to emerge. It's much like raising a kid. There's no activity that you can do, clap your hands, show something, to make a culture change. It's really just, it's like gardening. You just need to create better conditions for it to emerge. And with that, the corollary is that you need to do things. And going back to something that Sean mentioned, which is learning, back when I was doing my master's degree, I kept talking about learning and change, and that you can only change something that you've learned about, and you can only learn about something that you actually tried to change. And so I think organizationally, that's very much the same. And that can take the form of many different types of change. One of them is digital, and a very important one that moves the needle. And so that's what I think. So it's not so much a consequence, but rather an ingredient and an enabler, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It's the noun, not the verb.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good. We're aligned there. One of the definitions we had of culture is promises made and kept and activities done over time. And the key being over time.
Over time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
Makes a lot of sense. I like that a lot. Yeah.
So much. So I want to thank you for joining us especially those also in the US, post a long weekend. So I really look forward to connecting with you after after this, and be sure to keep in touch. And if there's any question that comes to mind after you think about this or drive your way home or wherever you are, feel free to connect. I mean, this, I think I speak for all of us that this is always an interesting conversation for us, and there's always something to learn. And so please do feel free to keep in touch. I appreciate it so much, and thank you so much.